Thank you, Kirsten. Those kids are also related to you, right? We are witness to that fact. I don't know how, whether online you've kind of get into a rabbit hole of various media, but there is this one group of of types of media, and it's kind of like fails, like auto accident fails or something like that. So I'm going to share with you a Christmas present fail, because if there was a website for Christmas present fails, I would be on that website. I remember as a college student, I was trying to come up with a really great Christmas present for my family. And we were in that stage of time where we were going to make everything that we were giving away at that Christmas. And so I went out and I found this work of this craft that I could build. And to me, it looked absolutely gorgeous. And I put together it was a ship. With behind it, there was this velvet panel behind it, and you would attach the piece of black walnut wood, and it looked like the hull of a ship, and then you would have all of these places where you would take this gold thread and you would make the sails, back and forth and back and forth. You've probably seen it before, right? I loved doing it. I made a frame around it, and I worked hard on it. I thought it looked beautiful, and when the family opened it, they didn't think so. And I just thought that was just an extraordinary piece of art and a gift to the family. But that gift had a very short lifespan in our household. Mom, I think, graciously put it up for a few moments. And after that, after we were actually moving out of the house and selling the house after my parents had died, I found in the basement that beautiful work of art. Yeah, there it was by the furnace. Just kind of collecting dust over there. They couldn't throw it away because I gave it to them, but it was not all that meaningful to them. Have you ever given someone a Christmas present like that, where they just can't necessarily throw it away, but it's not all that meaningful to them? Well, it happens, doesn't it? We give presents and we say, I want to make sure that this is meaningful and doesn't get thrown away. I think it happened with Christmas presents. It can happen with Christmas. It's not all that meaningful to us, but we're not going to throw it away. Is it possible that Christmas could be like that? Well, when we look at the scripture and the description of the Christmas story in the Gospel of John, it's packed with reasons why it is meaningful and significant and not worth being thrown away. It is interesting that in all of the Gospels, the Gospel of John goes quickly through the Christmas story, really refers to it in some sort of a poetic fashion, and then goes right to the impact that it has. And the Christmas present that's described in John chapter 1 is the Christmas present that was given to John the Baptist. Now, John the Baptist wasn't there in the manger scene, but John the Baptist is right here in John chapter 1 in the introduction of Christ coming to the world as the light of the world. The writer John, puts John the Baptist right in the middle of this story. Why does he do it? Because alongside of the entrance of Christ into the world is this description of the one who is impacted by the entrance of Christ into the world. He was not the light, but he comes, the text says, to bear witness to the light. The gift God gave to John the Baptist was the gift of bearing witness. The word literally in the original language has to do with bearing witness, not just simply saying something, but carrying it. I actually am a witness by who I am, not simply by what I say. John the Baptist was a reflection of the light of the world. And that's where I want to go with us this morning. Ask this simple question: how did Christmas change John? Because in it we can ask the same question: how might Christmas change me? Christmas is more than a date on a calendar that comes and goes. It's not simply the addition of God's presence in the world, as extraordinary as that is. Christmas is meant to stick to us. We bear witness to Christmas. We carry it with us. Much the same way what will happen around here after Christmas Day is open. All the presents are opened and the wrapping paper discarded, and then you'll see people walking around and they're bearing Christmas, aren't they? I mean, it might be that piece of jewelry, it might be a sweater, it might be a shirt, it might be something like that. Lexus hopes it's their car. But it's the things we carry with us after Christmas that we bear witness to. Oh, I know what you got for Christmas. Well, the question I want to ask this morning is, what does God intend to give us for Christmas? What does it mean for us to bear witness to the reality that Christmas has come? And John helps us with that by pointing us to the story and the account and the heart of John the Baptist here. What are the marks of being a witness to Christmas? What is the present we open? I want to suggest as we look at John described here that there are several features of it that matter to us. The first is this: the gift of Christmas, one of the gifts of Christmas is humility. It's all over the text. I mean, John the Baptist is really clear. Friends, I am not the light. He keeps pointing people to Jesus when they're looking at him. John the Baptist is marked by this sense of, it's not about me. I mean, imagine this. John the Baptist is riding the tidal wave of viral attention. He actually has the attention, it says in verse 19, of Jewish leaders in Jerusalem and the priests and the Levites that want to know, who is this guy? John was well known. He had generated a social media presence of whatever sort it was in that age, and people thought he perhaps was the Messiah. Long talked about and people often longed to be designated there. There were people walking around the Middle East, Jerusalem in particular, that wanted to be known as a Messiah. I mean, who doesn't want to save the world? You know, I mean, there he is, and they think that John the Baptist is, you're the one who's going to save the world. You know, I'd just be happy if someone noticed that I saved the day. You know, I mean, we kind of want that, don't we? I'm the person that saved the day. And John the Baptist is given the opportunity to be designated as the person who saves the world, and he says no to that. John knew who he was. That's humility. To know authentically who you are. And John the Baptist said, I am, if anything, I'm the voice. I'm the voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight paths for the Lord, because you won't believe it when you see him. That sense of knowing who he is. I had a friend of mine who worked in the Kansas City area, and he worked for a foundation, and they distributed over $10 million a year to nonprofits. And Steve talked to me about being in that position. He was the one who made those decisions. And whenever he would go to a conference of nonprofits, particularly Christian nonprofits, he said, I would take my name tag and I would turn it around like that. Because everybody's just kind of gunning for Steve, because he's the one who's got millions of dollars to give to the person who comes with the right cause. And Steve said to me, it's kind of an odd position to be in. It seems like everybody wants to know who I am and to be with me. He said, I can tell the worst jokes in the world and people laugh at them. It just happens. And he hired an associate, it was also a friend of mine, and Steve was talking about what he was trying to do to help Adam as a young man in a business where everybody was looking at them as if they were really, really important people. And Steve said to Adam, he said, don't let this swell up your head. As soon as we run out of money, you run out of attention. Know who you are. And the gift of being able to simply know who you are is a gift that Christ wants to give us. And John the Baptist is there, and he knows who Jesus is. And in knowing who Jesus is, he knows who he is. Listen to this reference, because John actually talks about, he quotes literally from Isaiah chapter 40. I mean, it's an extraordinary chapter. And it describes God and it describes Christ in this. As John says, this person we speak of in Isaiah chapter 40 It's the person who lays in the manger right now. Listen to these words from Isaiah 40 as the text goes on, because in John is simply just a brief reference to Isaiah 40, but everyone who was reading this knew Isaiah 40. Let's reacquaint ourselves with it. To whom then will you compare God? He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. He brings princes to naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner do they take root in the ground, than he blows on them and they wither. And a whirlwind sweeps them away like chaff. Who will you compare me to? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all of these? Who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name? Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. There's a sense of who are you going to compare yourself to? And John the Baptist had this sense that child in the manger is the one who created the constellations in the sky. The glory of the universe resides in the person lying there in the manger. It helps a little bit with our humility, doesn't it? To recognize that we are not them. One of the privileges that Beth and I had when we were doing church planting in Milwaukee, and Beth was working for a ministry there, and she was doing stuff with the wives of the Milwaukee Bucks players. And we did a Bible study with the Milwaukee Bucks athletes and their significant others, and just got to be involved in their life a little bit. And I can remember going to a basketball game and had the privilege of sitting right there on the front row and the court in front of me, and to see these Bucks players and to see how massive they were. Just massive. And if I thought myself a good basketball player, I have two choices. I can line up next to one of our third grade Elevate players and say, I'm a pretty big deal, aren't I? Or I can stand next to an NBA power forward and just be filled with humility. God invites us to, if we want to compare ourselves to one who created the world, and to be able to just see Christ's humility, by God's humility, by choosing a manger, and by being the person who is the creator of the universe, and then to say, I know who I am now. I am not that person. I just simply have the privilege of bearing witness to the light. My perspective is this: when I see people characterized by humility, there's a certain nobility about them that stands out to me. What a gift to have that sense. What a gift to open that presence, that present, and discover who Christ is and who I am in return. So how do we open this present? I think one of the pathways is proximity, to just get close to Jesus. Go ahead during this Christmas season and sit in the corner of the cave where Jesus is born and reflect on what it means for the master of the universe to be in that manger right now. You know, the care and love and grace that's given by that. That sense of proximity to who Jesus is, to sit in the corner and watch. We're going to actually do that as we go through the Gospel of John these next couple of months, to see the reality of who Jesus is and how it changes and transforms us. John said, he must become greater and I must become less. Dear God, would you allow us to open wide that gift of humility as we get to know you more and more. There's a second gift that comes with this, and it's the gift of calmness. The gift of calmness. In fact, this text that John is quoting from Isaiah 40 begins with these words, comfort ye, my people. There's a sense of when the Messiah comes, the result of it is that we are comforted. Verse 2 says, "Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed and her sins have been paid for. She has received from the Lord double all of her transgressions." Just this gentleness of God that allows us in the midst of the chaos of life to know the calmness of the presence of Christ. You know, there is that song, Silent Night. The third phrase is, all is calm. And we can easily picture a nativity scene where the mother is comforting her baby, can't we? Just say, there now, you'll be okay. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right. Yet, in this Christmas story, those words aren't the mother's words, they're the baby's words. In the birth of Christ, it is God himself who is saying to us what we would typically think would be on a mother's lips. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. We sang the song, all is well. Those are God's words to us. That's why when we go back to Isaiah 40, we read these words. You who bring good news to Zion, go up on a high mountain, you who bring good news to Jerusalem. Lift up your voice with a shout. Lift it up. Don't be afraid. Say to the towns of Judah, here is your God. See, the sovereign God comes with power, and he rules with a mighty arm. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. He tends his flock like a shepherd and gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those who have young. There's a comfort here of a shepherd. There's a comfort here of a mom caring for her children. It's okay. Everything is going to be all right. Reminds me of my mom in a lot of ways. During this Christmas season, I think we have a tendency to reflect back on those precious to us who have left us, don't we? I remember the last few months of my mom's life, we were at the dining room table playing a game together, and Mom was doing what Mom always would do. She would always give me the cards I needed to win. I mean, she was just that kind of a person. I don't know where I got my competitive spirit. I could never do what Mom did for me. But there was just this sense of comfort and joy in being in my mom's presence. And I remember sitting there at the table thinking to myself, I want to rivet this into my mind because I don't want to forget the preciousness and the comfort I feel in this place. And that is wonderful, and God has given us those people in our places. But friends, know this, God is the ultimate source of our comfort. Those feelings that we may have towards precious people in our life, they are rooted in the preciousness of the one who made us. So in the midst of Christmas is this reminder that God has come to say to you and to me, everything is going to be okay. This is what we see in John the Baptist. He seems so settled. He loses his disciples. He loses his status. He loses his freedom. He loses his life. And yet there is a sense in this person who received this gift of Christmas that all is well. All is well. This is what God intends to give to us, to give to his children. So how do we open this present? In the midst of the darkness, we're reminded that all is well. Last Sunday, we talked about a liturgy around the Advent season to light a candle and recognize in the midst of the darkness, Jesus is the light. He will protect us. Jesus is the light. He will search out those broken places in our lives and hearts and will heal us. Jesus is the light. He will fill us and go with us. Jesus is a light. He will transform us. God is the God of all comfort, and he is the one who gives us the gift of peace and certainty even in the midst of chaos. Do you want to open that present again this Christmas? Lord, open wide your gift of humility. Lord, open wide your gift of calm. And then there is this other gift that we see here, and we find itself in the words of John 1, this sense of God's glory. John the Baptist says in verse 15, this person I baptize, he surpasses me. He says the same thing in verse 29. In verse 29, he goes on to say to anyone who will listen to him, look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, the brokenness, the darkness of the world. We go back to verse 16 of John chapter 1, and we read this, out of his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. Friends, these are more than facts on a page for John. This filled him with a sense of wonder. Verse 5, glory of the Lord. Verse 14, I've seen his glory. How does that wonder take place? Well, for John, he opened this gift of wonder in his life by embracing the purposes that God has for his life. He says a couple of times in John chapter 1, I really don't even know him very well, but I'm going to follow him. And it is in the following of Jesus that he begins to know Jesus. And it is in the knowing of Jesus through the following of Jesus that John experiences the wonder of what faith is all about. I've been struck this week by those who have followed him and exhibited the wonder of following him and the joy of it. John Sider's funeral just occurred recently, and talked about the funeral was this wonderful opportunity to bear witness to what God had done in John Sider's life. I was struck particularly by his son Phil's words, where he talked about John, whom many of you knew so much better than I did. Someone said to Phil, your folks, they knew how to do marriage right. As Phil recollected the evenings he would go to bed and he would hear his mom and dad just laughing with joy in conversation with each other. They said about Phil's parents, you had parents that we wish we had. Phil described the deep love of his dad and his regard for others and his call to his son to respect others. Phil said, if you want to be a help to anyone, be quick to listen and slow to speak. And Phil just recounted one story after another of John's life. And then he said this, all of his accomplishments pale in comparison to the strength of his faith and the relationships with others he cultivated. He said, here was one who was led by the Spirit of God, and there is music in him that will never stop as a result of his life. I think it's good to go to funerals of people who have said, I'm going to follow Jesus with my life, and understand the wonder that takes place when we say, you do that, Lord? So this is a story of John the Baptist. It's also a story of John the Sider and Dwight the Anderson. There are countless people that have opened the gift of Christmas and have discovered that it fills them with humility, and it fills them with calm, and it fills them with wonder. Friends, that's what Jesus wants for us this Christmas season. To be characterized by deep admiration of Christ, by wonder in who he is, by joy in his presence, and by awe in his magnificence. We're going to sing a song. Dave's going to sing a song for us, and we can just listen for the first couple of verses and then enter into it, where it refers to the perfect light of Christmas and the wonder that comes as a result of who Christ